The moment that changed everything. A legal showdown you won't believe. Imagine stepping into a courtroom, thinking it's just another day of doing your job, preparing evidence, presenting your case, and crossing your fingers that justice will prevail. But what if the moment you walk in, you're greeted not by the typical respect and professionalism of the court, but with cold, calculated hostility from the very person who's supposed to uphold the law? A judge, no less. Someone who's supposed to be impartial, yet someone who's clearly got his own agenda. That was exactly what Pam Bondi, a seasoned attorney known for taking on some of the country's toughest cases, faced as she entered the courtroom of Judge Howard Gates. It was supposed to be a simple day of legal procedure, until it turned into something far more explosive. This was a high-stakes government ethics violation case, with a wealthy developer accused of funneling taxpayer money for his own private projects. Bondi had all the evidence she needed to expose the truth, but what she didn't anticipate was a judge so determined to sabotage her that he almost seemed to have a personal vendetta against her. From the moment Pam stood before the bench, she felt the tension in the air. Judge Gates, a man infamous for his biting sarcasm and unpredictable rulings, barely glanced at her before throwing insults disguised as questions. "Miss Bondi, I assume you've prepared something of substance today? Or should we skip ahead to the part where you waste my time?" His voice oozed with disdain. The room seemed to hold its breath. The defendant's legal team chuckled, sensing weakness in the air. But Pam wasn't about to let Gates rattle her. She'd faced worse. She'd dealt with powerful men in the courtroom who tried to belittle her, and every time she stood tall. This time, however, it wasn't just the case on the line. It was her own reputation and credibility. The case, a government ethics violation, was supposed to be about justice, holding the powerful accountable for misusing public funds. Instead, it became a battle of wills. Judge Gates, with his icy demeanor, wasn't just questioning the facts. He was questioning her professionalism, her integrity. The more she tried to present the evidence, the more he mocked her, dismissing her efforts with snide remarks. It was clear. This wasn't about the case anymore. This was personal. Bondi could feel it. Gates was pushing her buttons, trying to provoke a reaction. But she knew something he didn't. She wasn't just prepared for this case. She was prepared for a war, and she wasn't going to let his insults get the best of her. With each sarcastic comment, she calmly presented the evidence that would expose the truth. But the more she pushed, the more it seemed like Judge Gates was hiding something. What did Gates have to hide? Why was he going to such lengths to discredit Pam Bondi? And how far would he go before his own actions caught up with him? What happened next would send shockwaves through the courtroom and change everything. The battle for control, the courtroom tension intensifies. As the courtroom settled into an uneasy silence after Judge Gates' snide remark, Pam Bondi stood her ground. She'd been through countless courtrooms, faced some of the toughest adversaries, and been subjected to harsh, calculated moves to throw her off course. But there was something uniquely malicious in Gates' demeanor today. His deliberate slowness, the sharp edge to his insults, the way he dismissed her attempts at presenting her case. It was more than just courtroom theatrics. Felt like he had a personal stake in making her fail. Pam took a breath and forced herself to remain calm, gathering her thoughts. She knew the stakes of the case. A powerful developer with deep political ties was at the center of a massive fraud involving state funds. If the allegations were true, this case had the potential to cause serious political fallout, something Gates surely recognized. So why the sudden hostility? "Your Honor," Pam began, her voice steady but firm, "I believe the evidence will speak for itself. This case involves the misuse of taxpayer dollars, and it is my job to ensure that the facts are presented clearly and accurately." She could feel the weight of the room's eyes on her, and yet she refused to let it intimidate her. Gates was trying to break her down. He wasn't just being difficult, he was trying to throw her off her game. Judge Gates' response was almost a reflex. He didn't look at her as he spoke. Instead, he slowly flipped through a file in front of him as if searching for something. Anything to dismiss her. "Taxpayer dollars, right?" he said, a mocking edge to his voice. "Because that's never been the foundation of a frivolous case before. A A few chuckles rippled through the defense team. It was clear they were enjoying this. Pam's jaw tightened. She knew the defense was enjoying the spectacle, but she wasn't about to let them see her flinch. She had a job to do, and she would do it no matter how hard Gates tried to make her second-guess herself. "Respectfully, Your Honor," she continued, keeping her tone calm but unwavering, "I would hardly call felony corruption charges frivolous." The words landed with intent, and for a brief moment, the courtroom held its collective breath. This was no longer just a case about corruption, it was about intimidation. And Pam Bondi wasn't going to be cowed by it. Gates narrowed his eyes, clearly irritated. His voice took on an even sharper tone. "Mrs. Bondi, spare me the lectures now. Just get to the point. I don't have all day to entertain whatever grandstanding you have planned." It was clear that Gates wasn't even trying to hide his disdain anymore. This wasn't just a matter of legal procedure. It had become a battle of egos. Gates wanted to control the room, to dominate the courtroom with his sharp tongue, and to make sure Pam knew who was in charge. But as the tension grew, Pam held steady. She wasn't going to play into his hands. She knew exactly what he was trying to do. He was trying to provoke her into a public confrontation. That's what people like Gates did. They didn't engage in reasonable discourse, they sought to humiliate, to break the other person down. And the key to dealing with people like Gates was simple. Don't let them see you sweat. Pam's heart rate remained steady as she calmly turned to the evidence she'd prepared, picking up a file and placing it on the table. "Your Honor, I'd like to direct the court's attention to Exhibit A," she said, her voice clear and confident. "These financial records clearly demonstrate that the defendant's company received nearly triple the amount approved in the original budget." Before she could finish her statement, Judge Gates interrupted her again. This time, his voice was laced with sarcasm. "Do you always insist on drowning people in paperwork? Or is this just your way of compensating?" He didn't even look at the document. And that's when the shift occurred. Gates' words hit their mark, but they also exposed something deeper. His own fear. This wasn't just a power move anymore. He wasn't just trying to belittle Pam or throw her off course. He was trying to cover something up. There was something behind his actions, a hidden agenda, something at stake for him personally. And Pam, being the experienced attorney she was, could sense it immediately. She didn't flinch. She didn't react. Instead, Pam paused for a moment, giving the courtroom a brief, deliberate silence. This wasn't just about the case anymore. This was a message, and she was sending it loud and clear. "Your Honor," she said, her voice cutting through the tension, "if you prefer to continue making this personal, I'm happy to request a recess while we address any professional concerns you may have." The courtroom shifted. People exchanged glances. The judge had crossed a line. Pam hadn't raised her voice. She hadn't been rude or confrontational. But her words were precise, pointed, and undeniable. She wasn't going to tolerate this any longer. The power dynamic had just shifted. Gates, for the first time since the hearing began, seemed slightly taken aback. His lips curled in a faint, almost imperceptible smile. It was a smile of recognition. He knew she wasn't backing down, but still he wasn't going to let it go. "Oh, I don't have concerns, Mrs. Bondi," he said slowly, leaning back in his chair. "I just know a weak case when I see one." There it was again, his attempt to undermine her. But this time something changed. Pam didn't rise to the bait. She remained calm, collected, and professional. It was at this moment that Pam Bondi realized something crucial. This wasn't about presenting evidence. This was a battle for control, a contest of wills. Gates wasn't just a judge trying to manage a case. He was a man trying to control the outcome of this trial at any cost. And it wasn't just the defendant's freedom at stake. It was his own reputation. Gates wasn't just playing a legal game. He was playing a dangerous game of personal stakes. And so Pam Bondi pressed on. The ultimate reveal, exposing the truth. The tension in the courtroom was palpable. The silence between Pam Bondi and Judge Gates was deafening, as if the entire room was holding its breath, waiting for one of them to break. Pam stood still, her back straight and her expression unwavering. She knew something that Gates didn't yet realize. This wasn't just a battle over a case. but a battle over his own actions. And now she was going to expose him. The turnaround moment. After a few moments of intense silence, Pam picked up another folder and set it down on the table with precision. The calmness in her movements contrasted sharply with the intensity of the moment. As the courtroom watched, she glanced once more at Judge Gates, her eyes steady. "Your Honor," she began, her voice controlled but carrying an unmistakable edge. "I would like to submit a motion to deny." A brief pause hung in the air, but before she could even explain the motion, Gates leaned forward, cutting her off yet again. "I can already tell you it's going nowhere," he sneered, his voice dripping with disdain. "Let's be honest, Miss Bondi. This entire case is built on speculation. A little creative accounting, and suddenly you're crying corruption." This was it. Pam could feel the anger bubbling just beneath her calm exterior. Gates wasn't just ignoring the evidence, he was actively trying to suppress it. But she wasn't about to let him get away with this. She kept her tone neutral, but there was a steel in her voice that couldn't be denied. "Your Honor," Pam said slowly, drawing out each word. "Are you refusing to allow my motion before hearing its contents?" She looked at him squarely, a slight tension in her voice now, but still measured. This was no longer about the legal technicalities. This was about standing up to a man who thought he could control the courtroom. Gates paused, his lips tightening, and then, in a voice full of arrogance, he replied, "I'm refusing to indulge this circus act any longer." This was no longer just a disagreement, it was a direct challenge. Pam's composure faltered for just a split second, but only a second. She straightened up, locking eyes with him. She wasn't just fighting for her case anymore. She was fighting for what was right. The room seemed to tilt on its axis, as everyone in the gallery could feel the shift. The reporters scribbled furiously. The tension was so thick that you could almost feel the weight of the air between them. Pam didn't take the bait. Instead, she quietly moved forward. She flicked a few pages in her file, her eyes scanning the evidence she'd prepared. "If you're refusing to consider my motion, then let's proceed with the next piece of evidence," she said calmly, as if nothing had happened. But everyone in the room knew it was anything but calm. She was refusing to back down. The hidden agenda, the real motivation. Pam could feel the change in the room as she continued presenting her evidence. The crowd, the defense team, even the jurors, everyone was watching with rapt attention. As she moved through her documentation, it became clear that Judge Gates wasn't just reacting out of procedural frustration. There was something more to this. The smugness had left his face, replaced by a tight-lipped silence. Something was wrong, something he wasn't saying. And then Pam caught it, the flicker of panic. For the first time since she entered the courtroom, Judge Gates didn't look like a man in control. His hands, once resting comfortably on the bench, were now clasped tightly together. His jaw tightened. The game had shifted, and Pam could feel it. She carefully clicked to the next piece of evidence on the projector screen. "This document," she continued, her voice as steady as ever, "was obtained through a subpoena, and it shows that the defendant's company received nearly double the amount it was originally approved for." Pam looked at the judge, then back at the screen. She could feel the energy in the room shift even further. Something had changed. This wasn't just a legal case anymore. It was a game of cat and mouse. Pam wasn't just presenting evidence. She was setting up the trap. It was then that the truth started to break through. Pam wasn't just exposing the defendant. She was exposing Judge Gates himself. The evidence was clear. The documents showed that Gates himself had signed off on unauthorized financial transactions between the defendant and the city's planning board. She hesitated for a moment, letting the weight of the moment settle over everyone in the courtroom. "Your Honor," she said, her voice calm but firm, "would you like to explain why your signature appears on an unauthorized financial transaction involving the defendant?" The words landed with a sharpness that cut through the thick tension in the air. The room froze. Everyone in the courtroom felt the shockwave ripple through them. Pam had just dropped the bombshell. She wasn't just after the defendant now. She was after the man who had been trying to suppress the truth all along. The judge's response. A desperate attempt to cover up. Gates, for the first time in the entire hearing, was visibly rattled. He shifted in his seat, his fingers trembling slightly as he reached for his water. "That document," he muttered, trying to regain control, "is inadmissible." Pam's eyes didn't leave him. "How so?" she asked, her voice dripping with irony. "It was subpoenaed by my office." Gates' response was a weak attempt to deflect, claiming that the document was mishandled. It was clear he was grasping at straws. "It will not be considered," he said, his voice lacking the conviction it once had. Pam didn't blink. She wasn't fazed by his bluster. Instead, she spoke slowly, her words carrying weight with each passing second. "Your Honor, this is a public hearing. The media is here, and every single person in this room just saw you declare critical financial evidence inadmissible without a valid reason." The words hung in the air, thick with the gravity of the moment. For the first time, Judge Gates had no answer. His face was now flushed, his eyes darting around the room, unable to meet Pam's unwavering gaze. Then, in an unexpected move, Pam did something that no one could have predicted. She reached into her briefcase and pulled out a small recorder. Placing it on the table, she pressed play. The voice that filled the room was unmistakable. Gates' voice, low, gravelly, and unmistakably calm as it said, "Take care of it. I don't care how. Make sure she doesn't get her hands on those ledgers." The courtroom fell into utter silence. Every person in the room had heard it. Judge Gates, the man who held the power in that courtroom, was caught red-handed. He wasn't just trying to suppress evidence. He was trying to cover up his own involvement in the scandal. Pam Bondi had just exposed him for who he truly was. The ultimate reveal. This is the point of no return. Pam Bondi, with her unflinching determination and strategy, has done what many thought impossible. She has turned the tables on Judge Gates and exposed his corruption. The courtroom drama now reaches its climax, and the power dynamics have completely shifted. The focus is no longer on the defendant's financial misdeeds, but on the judge's own criminal actions. In the final moments of the video, Pam Bondi's quiet, calculated brilliance has left everyone speechless. The real game was never about winning the case. It was about exposing the corruption that ran deeper than anyone had imagined. And with the truth finally out, the consequences for Judge Gates are just beginning. If you were as shocked as we were by the explosive turn of events in this courtroom drama, don't forget to hit that like button. Share this video with your friends and let them know how justice prevailed in the most unexpected way. And if you want to see more gripping legal battles, twists, and stories that keep you on the edge of your seat, be sure to subscribe to our channel. You don't want to miss out on our future videos. There's always something new and unbelievable around the corner. Thanks for watching, and remember, the truth always has a way of coming out. See you in the next video.